Your art matters right now. And you're always worthy, no matter whether you've picked up a paintbrush this morning and you stuck to your goal, or whether you haven't done it in 30 years, but you still dream about it, right? You're always worthy no matter what.
You're listening to Creative Rebels, the podcast for creatives. Welcome back, Rebels. David Speed here. Did you listen to last week's episode yet? I told you it was a good one. Thank you to everyone who's DM'd about George on Sports episode. Turns out it was exactly what some of you needed to hear at that moment in time. Next week, we have Brandon Novak coming on the show. If that name sounds familiar, then maybe you watched Jackass or CKY when you were a kid. Brandon, famous skateboarder, famous Jackass alumni, and famous heroin addict who has been to the very pits of hell and crawled his way back out again. He's been sober for 10 years, and I met up with him when I was in America recently and had a beautiful conversation with him. So very excited to share that with you next week. And this week's guest, I mean, we're on a hot streak at the moment, I think. Some of the guests that we have coming up are all superheroes who have incredible stories that I'm so excited to share with you. People often ask me what my favorite episode of this show is. And that's a really difficult question because I think in the question, what people are asking for a lot of times is like, what's the magic bullet? Like, don't make me listen to every episode. Like what episode can I listen to that's going to change my life? And I don't see the podcast in that way. I think this show is a course that will continue for as long as I'm able to produce it, with weekly optional lessons, with optional homework, and everyone that listens will graduate at the time that they're supposed to graduate. Like, all of you are going to graduate at different times. This show is here to hold your hand for as long as you need it. It's not one important episode. It's a series of stories that are going to build you up for as long as you need it. But that being said, this episode is a really important episode. I would say if you will force my hand into that answer, like, go back and listen to Amy McNee and listen to this week's episode with Stephanie Harrison. Stephanie's the author of a book called New Happy, and she's the founder of the New Happy newsletter, which I believe has well over 1 million subscribers to it. And her mission is to break down these ideas that we have around old happy, which basically what most of our ideas of happiness are based on, these ideas of old happy, which is not serving us. In fact, it's probably making us more miserable. I think that Stephanie's research, because everything she talks about, like, she has delved into. Like, this book took her 10 years to write. The book that we're going to be talking about, New Happy, during this show, it took her 10 years to write this book. And I think the research that she's done is going to challenge the foundations of how you make your work as a creative. She talks about, like, becoming connected to yourself, to others, and to the world around you. And that's really the key to changing your life. And one thing she speaks about in this episode is how to unfold yourself. I'm so glad to have met Stephanie. I think she's such an incredible person. And the way that she uses language, I think, is so interesting, because when we wrapped up the interview, she said to me, what can I do to help you? And the wording of that is so specific, because so often when I finish a podcast or I meet a creative or whatever, my thing to say is, let me know if I can help you with anything. You see the difference in those two statements. It's very, mine is wishy-washy. Mine's like, kind of, I'm here if you need it. Stephanie asked me a direct question, what can I help you with? Which I think is really beautiful. There is a question that I very nearly didn't ask Stephanie at the very end of this episode, because again, it's one of those magic bullet questions. And I normally don't ask creators those sort of questions because I don't believe there is a magic bullet. I'm so happy that I asked Stephanie that question, because I think her answer was really, really valuable. So enough from me. Please keep your DMs coming in. Thank you to everyone who is supporting the podcast by giving £5 a month on Substack. I really appreciate it. Honestly, without you, the show wouldn't get made. And without further ado, this week's guest is Stephanie Harrison. Stephanie, I was knocked out when I read your book, because
I was expecting a certain thing, which it definitely like touched on. But then when you started talking about creativity in the book, I was just like, oh my God, basically everyone who listens to this show is on this like quest for happiness, and you really like beautifully put it in the book. So I think if you're listening to this now, you're on a path to happiness. It's something that you're looking for, and your book is about happiness. So my first question for you is, could you define happiness? What is happiness?
Yeah, I think that when I try to define the state of happiness, I would usually describe it as the experience of being connected to yourself, others, and the world around you. So ultimately, it's this state of connectedness. And then the path to happiness, I argue in the book, is to be who you are and then use who you are to help other people.
That's interesting because we've talked about being who you are before on this show. We just had Justin Schumann on, who's sort of an expert in, he says like, I help you to be more human.
Mm.
And so those kind of issues came up a lot. I'd be interested in your take of like, how can you be yourself? It's such a difficult question. How can I be myself?
It's such a good question. It's important and it's challenging. And I think that so much of our discourse around being yourself is actually not equipping us to do that. And so when I'm talking about being yourself, I'm not talking about a level of like permissiveness of simply like showing up in whatever way feels easiest or simple to you. It's ultimately much more rooted in the cultivation of your character and the cultivation of the specific parts of you that are not only what we might think of as kind of your best self, but your most transcendent self, your most aware self, your most creative self, and then figuring out how to bring those things forward. And so I argue that we have these three different types of gifts, and there's your humanity gifts, which is who you are as a person. There's your wisdom, which is what you've lived through. And then there's your talent, which could be your creative passions or pursuits. But ultimately, it's sort of a little bit like, mining for gold. We have to go on this little journey inside of ourselves to discover what that gold version of ourselves looks like. And then through a process of discovery and practice and understanding, we can kind of master that experience of bringing that version of ourselves forward and share it with the world.
I think that's interesting. If I think back, I think often when I was younger, I would look at other people and sort of try and map myself onto them and go, I really like how they show up in XYZ ways. But then I think being older, I sort of understand now that I was never able to do that. I don't think you can. I guess it's good to have people that you look up to and admire. But every time I saw the way that someone was, and I was like, I wish I was like that.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever been able to like replicate it. And I think now I'm
Mm.
just sort of a version of myself, and I've probably taken bits from other people. But what's your
Mm.
thoughts on sort of like if you're looking at sort of mentors and being like, is that a good thing to be like hero worshipping and be like, I want to be like that person, or is that like not a good path?
I think we're made through our relationships. And so, as you're describing it, this sort of process of looking at other people and deciding what we admire, what we emulate can be a healthy thing. But I think it has to come from the right intention, right? So, if you're looking at someone and thinking, oh, they're so much better than me, they're so much more successful, they're so much more talented, like whatever it is that you're telling yourself, then looking at them from that position of almost being one down, like inferior, that is not helpful, in my opinion, unless it's something where you're like, hey, this person has mastered the craft of writing poetry, and I want to be a poet, and I'm going to use this as a level of inspiration for me to move forward. But ultimately, I think that the most healthy way to do this is to go, wow, like, what is it in me that's responding to them and their way of being? Is it the way that they talk and communicate about their work? Is it the way that they are really generous with what they've taught? Is it the style of work that they're doing? Like, there's something within you that's responding to it. And your first task is discerning whether you're responding out of insecurity or perceived inferiority. And if you're not, then how might you learn from that and use that? I know for myself, I've found great comfort and hopefully growth in studying, people who have come before me and then trying to throw it into like the soup that is myself and figure out how to blend it. But anytime I've come at it from a position of like, oh gosh, this person is so much better than me, it's never generative in the way that we want it to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Could you do your definition of happiness again? It was like connecting and becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah, so being who you are, then using who you are to help other people.
Okay, that's beautiful. That's so succinct and perfect. Okay, so I think language is so clunky, and as humans, we have to label everything. What comes up when I say like other words to you, like pleasure or joy? How is happiness different from those things?
It's such a great question. Maybe it helps sometimes to put them under like this big umbrella of positive emotional states or states of well-being or flourishing, and then we can sort of divide them up into little chunks underneath that. So joy for me is a momentary experience, much more short-term than happiness, where something positive happens to you and you react essentially in a state of delight or love. And then joy can be extended through cultivation of practices. You can get better at holding on to joy, or you can get better at cultivating it. Yeah, you can. So like the more that you learn how to savor your experiences of joy, and almost like kind of like thinking about yourself like Velcro, and the joyful moment is the other side of the Velcro. Like, how do you make it stick to you a little bit more? So that would be how I would think about joy. And then pleasure is to me much more about like physical sensation and satisfaction of basic needs. So like the pleasure of a glass of water on a really hot day, or of, moving your body after a vigorous workout, right? It's more kind of grounded in your physicality and in your senses. And happiness to me is sort of an overarching bucket term for these words and a lot of other ones, but it also has the element of thinking more broadly about your life. So it doesn't only include those emotional states, but it also includes an evaluation of, do I feel like my life is going well? Do I feel like it's aligned with my values and who I am and what I'm moving towards? And to me, that's why it feels more encompassing than something like joy.
Yeah, I love that. And is it possible to always be happy?
No. I think it's possible to have a happy life. And in fact, I think that a happy life is in many ways defined by our ability to experience all of our feelings, right? Because if relationships are the most central element of a happy life, really, it's like we could divide it probably into relationships and one's calling or purpose, like one's creative work. Those are probably the two most important things, particularly for people who are listening. And so, okay, if you have a calling, and I know this personally because I've had this experience myself, like a lot of the time it's really frustrating. Like it's full of ups and downs. It's hard. You have to push yourself. You have to do deliberate practice. You have to humble yourself all the time. You have to get over your ego. You have to sit down at the damn desk even when you don't want to. Like all of that stuff. Those are not pleasant emotions, right? But you do them because the reward of the calling is so meaningful, and because sometimes you are rewarded with these really joyful and beautiful moments where you make something that feels authentic and transcendent and it moves people and all of that kind of stuff. So I think the mistake a lot of people make, and I'd be super curious to hear your thoughts on this, but from what I see, the mistake that people make is they want the benefits of the calling or the positive relationships without recognizing that they have inherently will include difficult emotions that go along with it. You actually can't have one without the other.
100%. I love that. I suppose because you mentioned that it's relationships and plus the calling. Sorry, I'm doing a million backflips in my brain as you're speaking. So it's the relationships plus the calling, and then I guess the sort of utopia is when you can, for me anyway, it's when I can blend both of those and I can answer my calling and serve community at the same time. And it's interesting actually because Rick Rubin talks about how which is sort of opposed to this, he talks about how when you make art, it should be only for yourself and you should disregard the audience. And like
so much of my work is for the audience. Like I love the time that I have with myself, and I get into flow state and it's me versus the canvas, and I'm trying to, I start with a blank page and I'm trying to craft something, and that's all mine, and no one else is in the room with me, and that's my process. But then once I've got the finished product, it's like I made it because I wanted to give it to people. I wanted people to enjoy it. I mean, I'm a street artist, so inherently, like, I put my stuff in the street in the most like obvious places like possible, so that people are going to see it and interact with it. And I obviously, our Lord and Savior Rick Rubin, I don't want to ever, like, he knows more than I will ever know in a million lifetimes, but it is interesting to me that he thinks that the art should not involve the audience, because I think when you're talking about meshing those two sides of the calling plus the community, that inherently involves an audience.
Yeah, I totally disagree with him, for what it's worth. I think your description rings beautifully true. And ultimately, that mindset to me seems utterly grounded on the belief that we're separate from other people, that we actually can remove somebody else from our lives when we're in the studio. How is that possible? We are shaped by other people. Everything that we are is the result of what other people have given us, whether it's through the art we've consumed, the feedback we've received, the encouragement we've gotten, through the way that people have guided us, through the lessons that they've offered us as teachers. So any person who comes into a room staring at a blank page, they are not a single separate person. They are an amalgamation of everything that everyone has ever invested in them. So how could we ever remove them from the space?
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's like, I mean, nothing gets made in a vacuum, does it? And it makes me think of how babies are only afraid of one thing, I think, which is like falling. Is it like falling down? I think that's the only thing that they're scared of, and every other fear is a learnt fear. And I think this is a stupid analogy, but I think that everything that we like, and it has been shaped by our culture and how we grew up, and if we hear music that really resonates with us, if we'd never heard music before, it wouldn't have the same effect, because the style of music that we enjoy is because of the life that we've lived and our lived experience, and all of everything that we've like consumed over a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why a lot of the time when we are encountered with something unfamiliar, like, well, how do people react? They react negatively. They have these reactions of, oh, that's not art, or you can't do that, or that's not acceptable, right? Like, think about how people reacted to absurdist art and people moving from painting landscapes to painting geometric shapes, or Marcel Duchamp, and how this revolutionary shift in what art is actually really challenged people and it pissed them off. Like, one of the sort of principles of our psychology is that we like things that are familiar to us. So if we have engaged with something repeatedly over a piece of time, then we're going to be much more likely to like it. And ultimately, it takes somebody with a lot of humility and openness to be able to look at something they've never seen or heard before and go, oh, like, that's interesting. I wonder how I feel about that, rather than succumbing to their like base reaction of, oh no, bad, get this away from me.
What is a worldview?
So a worldview is sort of, you sort of just did a beautiful description of it. It's basically all the stuff that shapes the way that we navigate our world. And you can sort of think of it like the programming running behind the scenes that you don't really have any awareness of. So when we are little babies, we start to internalize these messages about who we are and how we need to show up and what we're supposed to do in the world. And over time, that ends up creating this worldview. And sometimes I think the best analogy is like of a pair of glasses. If you're wearing like rose-tinted glasses, everything is going to have a rose tint that you see. And you don't know until you take them off that those are not actually the colors that you're witnessing. So in the same way, your worldview affects literally everything in your life. And a lot of the time we are blind to seeing its impact until either something challenges it or somebody invites us to consider something from a new perspective.
Yeah, and when I was preparing for this interview, I was doing a lot of soul searching and sort of reflecting and thinking about my life. And one of the questions I was going to ask you is like how much change is possible within a person. And then I was thinking about how much I've changed through my life, and I definitely would have said that I was a pessimist for years and years, and I don't think I am that anymore. I think I'm actually the opposite. But I was frightened of the world, and I thought that people were inherently bad. And I had a really bad experience recently, like painting in the streets, and I feared for my life. I literally thought I was gonna die that day. It was the without doubt the most horrible thing that's ever happened to me, and I felt myself like maybe slipping into that old side of myself, that old like pessimism of like everyone's shit and I hate the world. Just because this one human who I thought was gonna physically end me. And then I just did an event this weekend where I swapped art with people. So 400 people came to my studio. They brought me something that they'd made, and I gave them something that I had made in return. And there was no money involved, and it was just a beautiful exchange of art. And it's probably the best project I've ever done. And it reconnected me with people and my thoughts and feelings around community and togetherness and how inherently most people are really beautiful and really kind. Like kind, like that's the word that came to my head over and over again through this whole thing, was just the kindness, the thought and care people have taken to make these things, even if they weren't very good artists, like or they didn't feel like they were a creative person, like they had tried to make something, and it was just this beautiful exchange. And the reason I tell that long story is because of worldview, and I think it's like it, I think in the book, maybe I saw it in the book or maybe it was somewhere else, but the thing about the fish not knowing that they're in water, they say, "What is water?" Is that from the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, there's the fish in the water, and the older fish goes by and he says, "How's the water, lads?" And then they look at each other and go, "What's water?" And that is your worldview. Like, you're in it and you don't really realize how shaped by culture and society and everything that's happened to you is. And so I'm trying to be more forgiving of other humans if I consider their worldview and how different from mine it might be.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, feel free to comment on anything that I've just said in the last 5 minutes, but how fixed is a worldview, and is it possible to change your own worldview, or is it possible to influence other people's worldview?
Yeah, the short answer is that it's absolutely possible. It doesn't mean it's easy necessarily, but I do think it's the most worthwhile thing that we can do. I'm so sorry that happened to you. That must have been absolutely terrifying.
It was bad. I mean, it's one of those
Yeah.
one in a million opportunity. I think when you're out in public in the street, like, it's unpredictable and you never know who you're going to run into.
Yeah.
And it was just a case of very bad timing on the wrong day with a person who was not very well, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Like, let me take a step back and kind of abstract this at the biggest level we can. Our world is sick. Like, I don't think that that's a controversial statement to make. Our planet is dying because of how we are behaving. People are suffering from mental illness, loneliness, cynicism, everything, apathy at unprecedented rates. Our relationships are falling apart collectively. We are watching horrific things happen around the world. So there's a broad level of sickness in our society.
Sorry to jump in.
No.
I will pin that. I saw the video you did about, and I can't remember the term. It was like an anemone or...
anemone, yeah.
Yeah, but the idea of speak about that.
Yeah. So in the 1900s, the kind of founder of sociology, whose name was Emil Durkheim, he was trying to describe what was happening to people as the Industrial Revolution was taking place. And he came up with this term called anomie to describe it, which is basically what I'm talking about here. I think we're in an anomic society now at the same time because of all the transition that we're experiencing with technology and the multiple crises that we're navigating and all of that kind of stuff. And so anomie, or the anomic society, is basically people who are completely disconnected from each other, people who have no idea how to fix the problems. And as a result, they end up basically becoming mean, giving up on the world, and treating each other terribly. So that's sort of like what I see happening right now. And so this whole is at the whole level, right? We're sick. And my argument is that we're sick because of the values that we have. Like the values and the beliefs in our worldview. So the values sort of like shape the worldview and they kind of interrelate in that way. But our worldview is making us sick because the fact is that despite all of this illness that we're experiencing from mental, relational, psychological, ecological, we're not doing anything about it. We're not saying, oh, we should change. There's something that seems to be wrong here. We should try and implement policy changes. We should protect people who are starving or who are being bombed or whatever, right? Like we're not doing anything at a high level. And that is because of this worldview. And so if your worldview is, for the most part, if it is shaped by this understanding that some people are better than others, only certain people deserve happiness. Happiness is achieved through selfishness, through acquiring more and more and abandoning your fellow human beings. Like, where do we end up? We end up here. And so ultimately, I personally think that changing our worldview is the only thing that will allow us to open the door to be able to free ourselves from this and build the world that I think the majority of people, if not everybody, want to live in. Because I even think that like the billionaires who are exerting harm or the politicians who are doing terrible things, like they want to be happy too. They're human beings. They want to have a good life. They've just been sold a bill of goods that isn't working. And that's because it's ultimately flawed and it's rooted in this old happy worldview. And so for me, my hope lies in the fact that we can change our worldview and that we can help each other to do that. And ultimately, I think it's the most worthwhile thing and the most necessary and urgent thing that we can do right now.
100% agree. You mentioned there old happy. What's old happy?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to define it. So old happy is just my little shorthand term for this worldview and the culture that surrounds it. And I argue that it comes from the forces of individualism, capitalism, and domination. And it teaches us these values about how we need to be and what we need to do and how we should treat each other. And ultimately, we can kind of start to unpack old happy in ourselves. And then from that new worldview, then we can start to make the change happen that we want to see. But ultimately, I feel pretty skeptical that if we don't unpack that worldview, if we, build things or try and make change happen from a place of needing to be better than other people or needing to make a lot of money or like whatever it is that's driving us, then we're going to end up replicating the same systems that we're trying to undo.
And so if you're a billionaire and if every human monkey on the planet is trying to make themselves happy, which at the end of the day, I think is what all human beings are doing. We're searching for a happy life. Their actions show that their belief is obviously wrapped up in, I need all of the resources for myself. And so because that's creating such a massive imbalance between because there's the old cliche of money doesn't buy happiness. But now in the world that we live in, where the few have everything and the many have almost nothing, and we have cost of living crises all over the world, money doesn't buy happiness. But what's your thought on that? Like, because I think it doesn't, but also we all need more money. Like it's this, there is a real imbalance here.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, it's criminal what billionaires are doing and how governments are enabling them. It is absolutely mind-blowing and utterly unethical that this is the system that we live in. Normal people need more money to survive, or they need to be able to get support in order to get their needs met. Ultimately, what I see happening is this project of squirreling away more and more resources away from people, from average, normal people who need that money to survive, to provide for their families, to fulfill their potential, to do things that they're excited about, to make art, to spend time with their loved ones and families, the things that make us happy, the things that make up a good life. and instead being funneled to billionaires who then take that money and hoard it and then use it to make more money for themselves, because ultimately they are pursuing an old happy ideology where they believe that they need more. And ultimately, in many ways, like as abhorrent as I find their behavior, they provide the best case study for why old happy doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because we can see, like, no one is getting to a level and they're like, yeah, I'm good. $1 billion, I'm good. Like, I'm set. And meanwhile, like, you ask a normal person, you're like, imagine I gave you $1 billion. Like, how would you feel? And you'd be like, I'd be ecstatic. I would make stuff. I would help the people of my community, blah, 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 whatever.
Literally everyone would give most of it away. Like literally everyone you give it to would be like, oh, God, there's no way I could use that much money. It's so ridiculous.
Exactly. Like we can't even contemplate how much $1 billion is, right? Like it's truly unfathomable. And yet it's not enough for them. And that's because ultimately old happy doesn't work. Getting more and more stuff doesn't work. And stealing it from people who need it especially doesn't work.
So making art is such a privilege these days, and I'm doing everything within my power to empower creatives to be able to make a career doing the things that they love. And because we interviewed a few years ago someone who said that if you don't share your art, you're stealing from the world. Marie Forleo, she said that, and I think that's so true. And I want to empower as many people to make as much art as possible. But I know there are so many people listening to this that really do need more money. So in order to do that, they're going to have to pursue it. They're going to have to go after the cash. How do I, as a creative, balance the need to make profit alongside wanting to embrace new happy? Because I don't want to get caught up into, because I mean, I'd urge everyone to go and read the book for like a much deeper understanding of this. But when Stephanie like breaks down what old happy really is, it's not something you want a part of, and you'll realize how entrenched in it you probably are. But so how do we balance the idea of getting more cash with still being okay with ourselves?
I think for anyone out there who's an artist, I really don't think you need to worry about it. Like what we want to guard against is, like, in many ways, I think that the trap is using your art to become like successful and therefore worthy as a person.
Okay.
Like, I think like that's more of the trap that I would be vigilant to looking for to my fellow artists. Like that's how I would think about it. Because there is such an impulse of being like, well, once my book is published, or once I get this gallery show, or once ABC happens, then I will be worthy and acceptable, and I will have proof that my art matters. And what I would want people to know is that your art matters right now, and you're always worthy, no matter whether you've picked up a paintbrush this morning and you stuck to your goal, or whether you haven't done it in 30 years, but you still dream about it, right? You're always worthy no matter what. And the thing about old happy is that that's how it gets its hooks in you. So our culture has convinced us that we are not worthy as people, and that our worthiness comes from achieving this sort of normative understanding of perfection. So like in the artist world, that would be exhibiting at the Biennale, or becoming a bestseller, or like whatever it is that you kind of hold up as your career achievement. And so basically that's how it incentivizes you to work yourself into burnout, to lose the joy of your work, to make compromises that are unethical or that don't feel right for you, because you think, okay, like as soon as I'm at the Biennale, I'm going to be okay and I'm going to finally feel good about myself. And it doesn't work. Like, just, you have to give up on that idea right now, and you have to start accepting yourself as worthy right here and now, no matter what you've achieved. Because then what happens is that unleashes old happy's claws from you. It's forced to let go. And from that place of worthiness, you can go, well, I want to make stuff. And of course you do, because we're human beings who are creative. Like, it's our birthright to make stuff and not to chase things. It's to express who we are on the inside and to make people feel less alone and loved and supported. Like, that's what art is. It's these beacons in the world that show us that, like, life is meaningful and it's worth trying things and making mistakes and messing up, and we can learn from that and we can grow. And if you're caught in this idea that my art has to be accepted at the highest level and validated in that way, then it's going to be really hard to do that.
Yeah, you're so right. But then as you're speaking, I'm like, I am so ambitious. Like I do want those things. Like,
but that's ambition. Ambition is good. Like I am not against ambition. I think like ambition is ultimately simply a desire to expand and unfold our potential. And I think like that's why I use that language in the book of like your talent is how you unfold your potential. And to me, that feels like a more authentic and also a freer version, like a freer conception of ambition. Because if my task in my life, like ultimately at the end of the day, I think that my task in life is to try and love people, try and help them, and try and be helped by them in return. Like that's what I'm here for. And I think that's what we're all here for. And my way of helping is in some ways through art. And for those listening and for you, I know that that's the same. So that's the calling part. And so where I am right now, were I to keep doing this for the rest of my life, however lucky I am to, like, however long I'm lucky to live, like, it would not be an unfolding of my potential if I wasn't ambitious and moving towards something. But I want to be moving towards this fuller and greater expression of myself and reaching more people to be able to hopefully support them in some way. And ultimately, that is the reward, is the unfolding. And sure, like, accolades are nice, right? Like, no, you're never going to hear me say, like, it wouldn't be nice to, like, be the star of the show or to have, like, a beautiful review or, you know, great feedback. Like, all of that is wonderful, of course, but we can't make it our goal. It has to be a side effect, a byproduct of that process of unfolding who we are. And I think if we can ground our ambition in that and say, like, my life's work is just to make stuff and to continue excavating the depths of myself and my experience in order to serve other people, then that becomes a truer north that doesn't waver when you don't get the things that you want. And by not making them the goal, you can allow yourself to enjoy those things if and when they happen, but ultimately you don't place your self-worth in the requirement that you achieve those things.
So those would be intrinsic goals as opposed to extrinsic goals.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. That was so beautiful. And I think when you first start and you have no track record and no one's paying attention to you and you are making things and you're being really vulnerable and you're bearing your soul and you go, because when you're a kid, depending on how supportive a family you have, but if you've come from a place where you do a drawing and your mum will go, that's incredible, and she pops it up on the fridge and goes amazing, and you're used to sort of getting some like good feedback from on your art from family, friends or teachers or whatever, and then all of a sudden you get a little bit older and you get a social media account and you post your art online and it's just crickets. It's a really difficult transition. And then you're looking at some of the greatest talent in the world. And I think that stops so many people. But I always urge, especially when I meet a young artist, is just to keep making stuff, because it will take you on this incredible journey through everything that you make leads to the next things that you make. And that is, for me, that will be a creatively fulfilled life, will be one where I made as much as I could. And you mentioned the word potential, and I'm obsessed with potential. I don't know what it is. I every time I meet a young artist, I just want to like show them, almost like put my arm around them and like, if only I could have like a projection of what their life would look like in the future. This idea of like, look, if you do keep making stuff, here's where it takes you. It's this crazy, like wiggly, unpredictable path, but it all comes from the making.
That's so beautiful and gives me goosebumps to think about. I mean, it's such a service that you're providing, right? Like, we need ultimately, like, because I believe everything is relational, like, everybody needs somebody in their life to say, I believe in you and here's a path I think you can walk down. Like, I would not have been able to do anything I've done with my book or The New Happy without having just a handful of people in my corner supporting me and telling me, I think you can do this. And like, painting that vision that you say. And ultimately, I think like that's one of the most beautiful things we can do for each other is we can look and see somebody else's gifts and go like, here's what's possible for you. And I'm going to hold this vision for you because I know you don't believe it, but I'm going to hold it so you can see it. And then I'm going to help you to like walk alongside of you as you walk towards it.
I think I'm going to write about this. There was someone who, so I used to work in a record store when I was a teenager, like 18, 19. And there was someone who worked there called Georgina. And I was very bad at art when I first started, but I loved it. And I was doing things. Anyway, this was the late 90s, early 2000s when trucker hats were a thing. They might be a thing again now, I don't know. But trucker hats were a thing. So I bought some like blank trucker hats and I drew on them. And it was bad. I mean, it was just bad. But Georgina would wear that trucker hat whenever she went out, and she was just that first person who just gave me a like little inkling of like, this is cool. Yeah, of course I'm going to wear it. I love this.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it's butterfly effect. Who knows? But like just that one cosign from one person who goes, which is why I always say to people, like, if you see your friends doing something, just go, that's cool. Just let them know like that they're doing the right thing or that you like it in some way. And I always think back to Georgina. I do wonder like if I hadn't had that little bit of confidence, just even not saying anything, just seeing her wearing the hat that I'd made is just, it was just a lovely thing.
That's such a beautiful story. And like, you know, it's so easy with creativity to get caught up in this individualistic idea, right? Like, oh, I'm supposed to do this all by myself. And I often want to tell people like, the reason it's hard is because you're not getting the help you need. Like creativity is hard. It's hard to unfold your potential, but it's like 100 times harder if you're not getting the support that you need for that. And so one of the things Old Happy convinces us to do is to blame ourselves for these systemic problems, because that allows us to stay stuck in them instead of challenging them. And so like, if you don't have somebody who supports your work, it's going to be a lot harder to have the courage to keep going. Like I've had similar experiences where one person said something to me early at the beginning, and that one person is what convinced me to keep going. And what I always want to tell people is like, can you create like a small group of people where all you do is you work together to provide support to one another as you're on your creative journey? Like you meet up once a month and you share where you're at and you celebrate each other's progress. And that will do so much more for you than you reading another Instagram post or reading another book about creativity or, you know, beating yourself up or coming up with these ideal habits you're supposed to have for a morning routine. Like, give that up. Like, please, like, it is not worth your time if you don't have the support systems that are in place, because that should be the fundamental baseline that every creative person has.
Could you share one or two of your support system when you were writing your book and what they provided?
My main support system was my partner, who his name is Alex, and he was suffering from a very serious illness that left him bedbound and essentially for many years unable to speak, unable to communicate. And so I was his caregiver during the time I was writing the book. And at a certain point, he started to regain some of his function, but he still was unable to look at a phone or a computer or a page. And so he, despite his like tremendous physical suffering, I would record parts of the book for him to listen to, and he could listen in like 10-minute chunks before he would end up crashing and getting sick again. And he would listen to it and he would give me feedback on it through just like in like the few words every day he had. And then I would go back and I would rewrite it and then I would re-record it. And I did that. We must have done it like several hundred times. But he was there for me with like every word, and he kept telling me, I believe in you and I believe you can do this, and over and over and over and over again, because I needed so many pep talks and so much support, and I never ever ever would have been able to do it without him.
You talk about Alex in the book and really emotional, and you kick the book off talking about that, and it's such a powerful beginning. Do you mind me asking like where he's at now and how are things?
Yeah, you're so kind. Thank you. He's doing okay. He's definitely like a little bit better he's certainly better from the worst of times and being unable to communicate and that kind of stuff. He still has a lot of a lot of physical challenges and pain, and we still have a lot of, like very significant restrictions in our lives. But I think, at the end of the day, like what we've learned from this experience is that there's so much, like it would be hard for me to even
Yeah.
like articulate it. I still feel like in so many ways I learn from it every day, and the fact that it's ongoing. But one of the core lessons I've had is that you can make your life beautiful even when you're suffering. And I think that I really hold on to that. And the way that you do that is through your relationships with other people. And this is just one form of suffering. I know everybody out there is dealing with something that's really
Yeah.
hard. And I just want, in many ways, like, I find it so interesting and ironic that, like, despite teaching about happiness, like, I feel in many ways like I'm actually also trying to teach about suffering and like how to navigate that. And ultimately, I guess it comes down to my belief that a good life will have suffering in it, and we have to learn how to navigate that. And I guess for me, the biggest real deep embodied learning experience was, oh, I can have a happy life even when I'm going through something really, really hard that I never wish I had gone through. And I can find a way to navigate this. And in many ways, that's been only possible because of his determination and desire to do the same, and the ways in which we are determined to support each other even through that. It certainly would not have been possible were I doing this alone. And so I think, again, it just comes back to me like you need people. You need at least one person to be there for you. And if you don't have somebody, like go be that person for somebody else and watch as it allows you to then get that back in return. And the more that we can do that, the more I think we'll be able to heal our way out of this sick, broken world that we live in.
Oh my God, you're going to get me emotional. When I first read about Alex, my initial thought was he is so lucky to have found you. And as you describe everything, you're also lucky to have found him, which is something that I wouldn't have thought of, but it's obviously shaped your entire worldview, to come back to that. And it has, I think, the absolute pain and suffering that the pair of you have been through together, and probably a lot of like frustration for you, I would imagine, and just not being able to communicate properly, and all of these things that are wrapped up into it, and the fucking shitstorm that you've been through, the way that has shaped your life and how you've come through it. And I mean, I don't think the book exists if you never meet Alex, right?
No, never. Like nothing. My whole life now is because I met him. Like he was the person who encouraged me to start the New Happy as a newsletter back in 2018. Like he was the reason. He told me, you should start making the art that you want to make. And that allowed me to start like making these little pictures to try and communicate these ideas, which then ultimately led to the book, which ultimately led to the development of this philosophy. And like nothing in my life would have happened without him. And he has like, and the reason I find it so important to talk about this stuff is because there is like, again, just going back to this, and I know I'm like kind of beating the same drum, but I just feel so strongly about it for artists. Like if I had believed I was supposed to do all this alone, if I had given up on requiring support even amidst those struggles and those times, then I wouldn't be able to have accomplished any of this stuff. Like none of this is something I've done alone. It might be my name on the book, but like it's his just the same, because he was a part of it and shaped it. And I feel like, and in many ways, like to your point about lucky, like people viewed it as a sacrifice I was making. Like I was destroying something within me or hurting my well-being. And this is why I wanted to tell people,
100% thought that when I first read it. I was like, this girl has given up her life to help this other person's life.
Yeah. And like, but this is the thing. It's like in surrendering, not sacrificing, in surrendering to the need that was in front of me, I was able to build the life I had always dreamed of. Before I met Alex, I was working a corporate job, miserable in my work, feeling like a unfulfilled creative person who was never going to make the things I wanted to make. Like, there was no part of me that felt like I was living my true potential at that moment. And it definitely took us on a circuitous route, like one that I never expected. But I had the faith that through being willing to meet life's challenges as they arose, that I could do something with them. And if I had a person in my life who was equally as committed to it as I was, who was equally as desirous of finding beauty even amidst the suffering, and equally desirous to make our lives meaningful in spite of it all, that we could find a way to do it. And it was very, very difficult at times, but I feel a sense of like pride and joy that I never would have gotten otherwise, as well as finally having the feeling of, oh, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And none of that would have been possible without what we've gone through and the journey that we've been on. So it's really complicated and really hard. But the way that we can love each other through either it's like partnerships, family, friends, writing groups, creative groups, whatever, that's what makes us. And if we can show up for each other through those things, then we are able to build something that I don't think we can do otherwise.
When you were locked in a corporate job and everything was bleak, and I think we have this idea of becoming a creative or doing something creative for our career, that it's sort of really selfish. Like I spoke to Amy McNee about this idea of how dare I say that corporate job and that cubicle is fine for you, but I don't want to do that. I want to make art. And it's taken me a long time to come to terms with it's okay to take that path, and it's actually incredibly generous to make art and to share it. Not to go too deep and emotional on this podcast as we have already, but I've received, in the history of my career, I've received 2 DMs from people who for some reason have sent me a DM saying I was going to finish things and check out, and then I saw your video, whatever it might have been, and it changed my mind. And so that's maybe 2 people in the world that are alive because I chose to make art, and I don't think it was, I think they were looking for something. And when you get a comment on your Instagram, and I'm sure you get this comment a lot, but people will say, I needed this today. And they needed it today because they were looking for something, and they just happened to find something that you'd written or that you'd created, and it struck that chord. And so I think it's very much wrapped up in the old happy idea of that, and I think it probably comes from a lot of sort of misery of people who feel so locked up and not able to share their creativity. But by letting it out, you can actually help so many people, even if you don't have to make world defining, incredible, like Nobel Peace Prize winning work. You can make a silly comic strip. You can bake cakes. You can, like, whatever it is that's, I mean, you talk about it in the book, the acts of service, the giving of your art to other people. And it's beautiful.
It's so funny that you say that, because Alex and I have talked so many times about the exact comment of I needed this, and how meaningful it is, and how it's like a little treasure when somebody says that to you. Like, God, it makes it all worth it. And I sometimes think that like people who engage in somebody else's artwork, like, they do not know how much 3 words can keep somebody going on the artist side. Like, it's life-changing. And the support that I have received from my community is what allows me to keep going. And that's why ultimately, like, I have to disagree with Rick Rubin or anybody else who is saying that other people are not a part of the process, because they are a part of the process, and they are what the process is. Like, in so many ways, like, I make things for people. If I hear somebody saying something, or I get a DM or something saying I'm really struggling with grief, like, I want to make something for that person. Like their comments and their feedback actually inform my creation process, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And maybe it's because of what I do or how I navigate things, but that support and feedback is what allows me to keep going. And there's such an interesting tendency we have to like kind of push that away, but I think we should walk towards it and embrace the fact like ultimately our art should make us vulnerable, and it should help other people to tap into their vulnerability too, so that they can discover who they are and who they're meant to be. And that's how we keep each other going. And we all have a role to play here. So even if you're an artist, like that's wonderful. Okay, how can you support other people and, build these communities and networks? And if you're not an artist, like you can participate in the process too by engaging with it and participating in it.
Can you talk about the study of the 4-year-olds who played music together?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. There's a study that has found that when kids play together, they have this like synchrony. Their body rhythms essentially line up, and then they become able to collaborate and cooperate more effectively. And so, like, you can see it in adults as well. But when we do things together, when we are engaged in meaningful conversation or in experiences, we can actually sort of transcend ourselves and be able to connect in a whole new way.
I love it so much. Well, as soon as I read that, I voice noted Amy McNee and I said, you just need to know that there's been a study done on 4-year-olds and this was the result. It's so beautiful. I love it. Stephanie, thank you so much for the book. I'm so glad I discovered it, and I think people are going to get so much from it. Is there anything that you still struggle with? I feel like sometimes when you're like so aware of all of the science, it could be really difficult to not like trip yourself up in your own brain and go, oh, I'm doing this, and then yeah,
I do that all the time.
You know too much.
I know enough to be able to label it at this point, and then hopefully the labeling allows me to change my behavior. So it's like, oh, I'm procrastinating. Okay, why am I doing that? Well, because I'm having an emotional regulation problem. Okay, so what's the emotion? And the hope is like maybe I can work through it a little faster or come to avoid it. But no, I struggle with all the same things everybody does. I struggle with worries about what might happen in the future, how people perceive me, or whether I'm good enough. Like I have all of those things. And I think the difference is that I know they're not the real me. Like they're just old happy detritus that I picked up. And so instead of viewing those moments as, this is proof that I'm bad and I should quit and give up, I now have an opportunity to say, well, okay, cool. I've just encountered a new little corner of myself that was colonized by old happy, and I'm going to plant my own flag there, and I'm going to start to unwind it and pull it apart. And then I get a little bit more freedom. And that process has been so incredibly fulfilling because bit by bit I have reclaimed who I really am, and then I've been able to share that with other people.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important to know that the happiness expert struggles, and I always let listeners know on this show that I'm a nervous wreck like all of the time as well. So yeah, it's all of your heroes and idols are just as fucked up as you are. So
they are. We're all just human, and like anyone who says otherwise is lying to you to try and sell something.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, very true. Yeah, we come back to the capitalism of it all.
Mm-hmm.
To leave us, are there any sort of like tips of like, is there anything that I can do daily that would just like anything easy that would help me get out of old happy and live a little bit more new happy?
Help somebody. Just try and help somebody every day. Just a small, whatever you can do. Just make it like an item on your to-do list and do it from a place of joy. Do it as like, this is my expression of who I am as a person, is I'm going to be here for you and I'm going to support you. And I really believe like if everybody around the world would just like sort of drop their shit for 5 seconds every day and go, who can I help? We would be able to make so much progress in such a limited amount of time. And so I try to operate under the auspice of I should engage in the world in the way that I wish everybody else would engage. And so the more of us who do that, the more we'll be able to make this world better. And so if you can help somebody and if you can realize the joy in helping and in sharing, then your life will change forever. And then the corollary is, of course, that you also have to let people help you too.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, that's basically a fucking revolution. And it's an easy one. It's something that we can all do. So rewind 30 seconds in your podcast and just listen to that again. Go and help someone today and fucking let's change the world. Revolution.
Yes.
That's what we need. Boom.
I couldn't agree more. I'm so grateful for you, David.
I am for you, Stephanie. I'm so glad we've crossed paths, and I hope to stay in touch with you, because I just think you're just an incredible person, and I'm
Right back
so
at
grateful
you.
for this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank
Could you let
you.
everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah, everything is at thenewhappy.com or on social media at newhappyco or under my own account, which is Stephanie HSON.
Amazing. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Do you know someone who would benefit from listening to this episode? If you do, share it with them. This podcast literally wouldn't exist if it weren't for the paid subscribers over at creativerebels.substack.com and for the team at Joy Collective.